Hello and welcome. Today I want to do a quick video and it is all about art mediums. So if you are wondering, you're an artist and you want to try something new, you want to try using a different medium like acrylics or oils or pastels, if you're thinking of changing things up, this video is for you. Or if you're a beginner and you really don't know where to start, what's going to suit you to begin with, what's going to be simple to use, should you buy oils, or where do you go? So this video, I'm just from my experience, I'm going to go through the different mediums quickly with you and just let you know what I think of them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is colouring pencils. And they are so easy to use. They are, if you're used to sketching and using an ordinary pencil, it's just adding in colour. You've probably used them as a child yourself, but I would highly recommend that you don't use the children's quality colouring pencils because they will leave you very, very frustrated. It's a matter of you're using the colouring pencil and you're trying to get the colour on the paper and you nearly start making a hole in the paper because it is so hard to get pigment out of the cheaper colouring pencils. So I would advise that you go to an art shop or a good supplier and upgrade, get a good quality colouring pencil that has got pigment in it. And it's completely different. If you compare one to the other, the colour in them is so much better. They're softer, they're easier to work with, and you'll get absolutely beautiful results from a high quality colouring pencil. So it is worth just investing. You don't need a lot of colours, just get a few colours, and that will be enough, a few basic colours. The other thing about using a good quality colouring pencil, you can get water soluble pencils. So if you run a brush with water on it over those pencils, over that picture that you've done, it will turn into a watercolor effect. So you're getting two for the price of one. Basically, you can use them as a coloring pencil, but you can also make it into a painting if you use water with it. So they're very versatile and very easy to use. I have used them in the past particularly for illustration, and love them. So if that's the type of work, each medium you use, you've got to think of, what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to get a lot of detail? Are you trying to illustrate something? Is it going to look like a cartoon? Is it going to look like a book cover? Well, if that's what you're going for, colouring pencils, good quality ones are a good idea. Or you can step up from there. The next one up would be, there are all sorts of different pens and ink pens, and you can buy inks to go with them. And they are very good as well. Now, I have used the felt brush pens, which are very expensive, but they are not as good as using watercolors. Just using a watercolor with a brush or using an ink out of a bottle with a brush, the effects are a lot better when you're using different types of brushes. But it is an option. You can buy these ink pens with brushes on them, so it's like using a marker, but you're getting ink effects with it, or kind of watercolor effects, but they're not perfect. But they are an idea as well. The next, inks as well. Inks are the colors in them are very strong and very intense. So you get a lot from a bottle of ink, a lot of color. You can dilute them down with water, or you can use them thicker, and you can buy bottles with droppers. And some artists use the ink straight out of the droppers and it looks almost like acrylic paint. So a lot of very nice effects. People using those get a lot of very good effects with them as well. The other thing is moving up again. I'm staying mostly going from dry to wet, would be pastels. And I have used them, and you just get so many beautiful, beautiful effects with them. And pastel artists, even though they're chalk, they would call them their work paintings. So really you're painting with a chalk as opposed to painting with a brush. The colors are beautiful. Again, the more you pay for the pastel, the better the result you're going to get. But there are some good kind of medium priced pastel sets that are excellent and just great to work with. So very easy to work with, very clean. You're not messing around with brushes, very transportable. And again, you get the high quality, you get something that looks, it is a painting. Um, Now, the one thing about all of these mediums that I've talked about so far is that you're using paper. These are all on paper. And the kind of disadvantages of them is that you will have to frame them with glass, under glass. Um, Now, maybe that's not a disadvantage. You can always go out and buy the frames in advance and then cut the paper to fit the frame, and then it's very cheap and reasonable to frame them that way. And of course, they're very well protected when they're under glass. With pastels, it is a very specialist type of paper, a good quality, high grade paper. You can't just use any paper. You need paper with a grit on it to hold the pastel. So there is a bit of technique to that, but it's a beautiful medium. Um, so again, yeah, with pastels, you need to fix them. You'll need to use a fixative because they are chalk. That's kind of one disadvantage of them that I find, even though pastel artists won't say they obviously highly recommend them and probably are used to using the various types of fixative. And if you know what you're doing, and what type of fixatives to buy, good quality, obviously you'd go for good quality, and that will fix them so that the chalk doesn't come flaking off. But yeah, a lovely option, easy to use as well. Next step would be watercolors. And watercolors, the one thing about watercolors, yeah, you can buy, again, beautiful colors. The more you pay for them, the better quality you get. Again, it's specialist paper. You need to buy watercolor paper that's very absorbent, but they're easy to use. The one thing about watercolor is it depends on what type of look you're going for. If you like the kind of, it's a delicate look when you're using watercolors. If you like that type of look that's watered down, and it's very good, I suppose, for painting flowers, detailed paintings of flowers or animals or details like that, or landscapes as well. And you can use them quite loosely as well in that type of style. But yeah, it is a certain look and a certain technique. It's a fast technique if you like painting quickly and you know how to make up your mind about things very quickly. It's good. But if you are going to make mistakes, if you're like me and you're a person who makes a lot of mistakes and wants to redo and do layer after layer, watercolor isn't the medium to use, because you have one go at it. And if you mess it up, I think if you mess up a small part of it, that's okay. You can use various mediums to correct it. But if you just mess up the entire piece, you're going to have to throw that piece of paper in the bin and start again. So that doesn't actually suit me, but it does suit. There's people who really like that, the fresh and fast approach that you have a go at it and you're finished with it and it's done, and you leave it and you're not going at it, over it and over it like I do. So that is watercolor, and they're beautiful. The next thing would be mixed media. And mixed media is using everything. You're using pencils, you're using chalk, you're using pastels, you're using paint, you're using everything mixed up together. And that's great fun. And maybe I'll come back to that and talk about that another time. But the thing is, if you buy your good quality coloring pencils, if you buy the pastels, if you buy water, as you move along and buy all these things, at least if you change your mind and you don't want to go into that style, you can use them all together if you're using mixed media. So they won't go to waste. You still have your stock there and you can use them all together. So like with mixed media, maybe you want part of the painting to be loose and experimental. You can have that. And then you can come in, if you want to put some detail in, you can come in with your pencil or your chalk and actually put in details into the mixed media. So you can have parts of the painting are loose and experimental, other parts you're adding detail in. So it is a mix of mediums and a mix of styles. You can mix lots of different styles and do stenciling and lots of various things with it. So it's great. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about is acrylics, and just here behind me, this painting here is painted in acrylics, and it's just to give you here an idea of the color that you can achieve with acrylic paint. The difference between acrylics and watercolor and inks is that you can build up more layers and more texture with acrylic paint, because let me just bring this one over here. I don't know if you can see the surface of this picture. It's not fully finished, but there's a lot of, I have done a lot of texture, built up texture with stencils and using the brush and stippling paint onto it, and it actually becomes raised off the surface and it gives you slightly 3D effect. So acrylic can give you that raised look, especially if you use it with a palette knife or you use your hands, or again using stencils. You can give an impasto effect, a lifted, a raised. The paint is actually coming out in 3D out of the painting. If you like that style, acrylics or more oil paints are for you, because oil paints, it's even, you can do more and more of that type of impasto work with oil paint. And impasto is literally, you're plastering on the paint, it's coming out of the canvas and it's thick layers of paint. So if you like that type of style, maybe impressionist style, where you have thick clumps of paint on the canvas, that and the beauty of oil is when you paint it and you use a palette knife or a brush mark, you can actually see the brush marks. If you want them, you can have those rough brush marks visible when the paint dries. Or you can use oils as well to paint in a softer, more watercolor fashion. But just going back, I will talk about the difference between oils and acrylics in the next video, because I have a lot to say about them. I've used oil paints all my life, and it's only in recent times I've turned more to acrylics, and really it is, there's several big advantages to using acrylics, and the quality of acrylics has gone up and up and up. So they're very, very good quality now. And what I love about acrylics most is that they dry so quickly. So I would highly recommend them if you want to go for the thicker effect, more heavy paint on a piece. I would recommend to go for acrylic paints if you're a beginner, and if you haven't used oils before, if you haven't used either and you want to go in that direction, I would say start with acrylic paints. They won't go to waste. Even if you go on and decide to do oil painting, you will still use those acrylic paints to put down foundations or the base layer for your oil paints. They won't go to waste. But acrylics, it is a fantastic advantage that they dry so quickly. So if you make a mess, you can just paint over it. Use a hairdryer, dry it out. Within minutes, you can be painting over that wet layer, or you can simply just spray it with water and wash it off. If you do something and immediately you realize you didn't want to do that, you can completely get rid of it immediately. And the fact that it's water-based as well, water is so much easier to use than white spirits or other solvents. You don't have the smell. And basically acrylics, I just find that there's a huge advantage, and I will go into those. I'll go into the advantages of acrylics and of oil paints in my next video. So please join me then. Hope you liked this. Hope you got something out of it. If you have a comment to make, please comment. If you want to add something to this, or you've had a different experience of these mediums, please add it in the comments. So talk to you soon. God bless and bye-bye.